Dear students, and welcome to our fifth lecture series on international finance. And I'm your instructor Jamal Haider. So to begin with, we were discussing chapter number 3, in which we talk about the derivatives, and we ended up with options, call option and put options. So let's go to explore a little bit, review on that. We'll talk about in our next slide. So number one, we discussed forward contract, and we talk about that. It's an agreement between the buyer and the seller, or in this case, foreign exchange dealer and a company or a person that specifies currencies to be exchanged, and they're going to be exchange rate that is written on the contract. We call that is forward rate, and also the maturity date also over there. Then we talk about that the unique feature for the forward market is that it is over the counter market, in which we talk about that the forward market is tailored for customer needs. If you want $1.5 million forward, you can find out that. If you want $500 for the forward rate, you can also find out, because this is over the counter, not regulated by some exchange. So we talk about the futures, which is the second kind of currency derivative. When we talk about that it is in standard volume. For example, if one standard is volume is $100,000, and if you need $500,000, then you buy 5 contracts. Then you ended up with 500,000. This is regulated. The same logic apply here as we discussed in forward. Just one distinction, that is the future rate is regulated by currency exchange, and the rate that we talk about in our contract that we agreed, and we call that is future rate. So the future spot rate is a spot rate that will exist at the end, at the future point in the time, and is uncertain as of today. So does it mean? Let me just make a okay, let me just explain here as well. So in future, what is future or forward spot rate? For example, we have a contract. So the rate at the initiation of the contract, we call that spot rate, which is known, right? And the contract that we did, we call that is his future rate. So at the end, right, when our contract is expired, we will be given according to what we talk about in our contract, which is future rate. The transaction will be on future rate, but what will be at that time spot rate, right? That is unknown. So that is the rate in the market. Okay, you can say that the future spot rate that is in the market at that time when our contract is expired or mature. Okay, so that is the market rate at that time when the contract will expire, right? So we also call it expected spot rate. The other name is also called expected spot rate or future spot rate, or the market spot rate at that time when our contract expires. And then we talk about the options contract, in which we talk about call option, which is right to buy, right? It means the buyer is calling this option, I have a right to buy it. That it means buyer will pay this premium. The premium is represented by small c, which is called the call option premium. Okay, so remember, this is option contract. It means one side this is obligation and on the other side this is option. Okay, so call option is written in the favor of buyer, so buyer will have to pay a premium. And we talk about a lot of discussion in our previous lecture. You can go to our previous lecture, YouTube link, you can just see over there as well. We talk about extensive examples in that lecture. And we also talk about the put option, which is written in the favor of seller, which is right to sell. So it facilitates the seller, so seller have to pay premium. It is represented by small p, right? So question is, to whom the premium will be paid, right? The other party which is into the contract. So put option is written in the favor of seller, so buyer will receive the premium. Call option is written in the favor of buyer, so seller will be given this premium. Okay, now let's talk about the next slide. Here we go. The international money market. So the reason for establishment of international money market is that corporations or governments need short-term funds denominated in a currency different from their home currency, right? So when there is a difference in currency, it means we need some international currencies. So that's why we need some international market, right? But since we need short-term loans, the life is less than 1 year, so we call this money market. So the international money market is in which there are international currencies that are going to be, in bundle of transactions, but for short-term purposes. So who gonna be asking for short-term loans? They're gonna be MNCs, corporations, and governments. Why not? There are like persons here, because persons individual needs are very small, so that's why it's not catered here. But you can also definitely, if you are wealthier, if there is a wealthier person who demands 1 million, 2 million, foreign currencies, so definitely this international money market also cater his demand as well. The second purpose is that the international money market has grown because firms may need to borrow funds to pay for imports. The famous example is that this is China and US. So if China sends goods to US, if China exports, so US will send them money in yuan. So US will be converting their dollars into yuan. So it means we need some kind of a market. Sometimes if you don't have, for example, if it's a Chinese partner, it says that as soon as I transfer my goods, I should be compensated. So the US guy, the person who imports from China, he can just ask a loan from international market in yuan and pay to a Chinese person and satisfy this transaction. And at the end, when when the goods arrive, then the person can send money to the bank as well, saying that okay, you help me to send this much amount of yuan, so I have right now this amount in dollars, which is exchangeable. You can tell me, I will pay you in dollars or whatever the contract is. Okay, the second reason is that the firms may choose to borrow in a currency in which the interest rate is lower. And that may be one of the major motive to establish international money market. So if this US person who needs yuan to pay to a Chinese partner, he can go to Japan, and through cross rates you can also minimize your payments. And also, if you are asking for loan, for example, if this US person who is importing the goods, he don't have money right now, he asks bank to give him the loan. So if the US interest rate is higher, then he can go to Mexico, ask for a loan in peso, and convert peso into yuan, sent to the Chinese counterpart, and after that, when it sells the good and receive the money and convert it, his money, his profit, or his revenue into peso and satisfy the loan which is in peso. Or you can go to different parts of the world, because due to this globalization, international investors can also ask loan from anywhere into the world where interest rate is lower. The third reason is the firms may choose to borrow in a currency that is expected to depreciate against their home currency, and that is very important. So the CFOs, chief financial officers, or financial managers, or international financial managers, one of the major responsibilities for them is to minimize the cost of the loan, right? So since the major companies or the MNCs, or multinational companies, they ask loan not in just thousand, not in just for 1 or 2 million, they ask loan in 50 million, $1 billion loan, right? So their motive for asking loan is should be in that country where currency is expected to be depreciated. When currency is depreciated, when they convert their home currency into that depreciated currency, they have to pay less amount of the currency that is that in which currency that they ask loan. For example, can I have a white screen here? I think I cannot. So let me just explain it to the next slide. Okay, we have pasted the third option in a new slide, and let me explain that here. So firm may choose to borrow in a currency that is expected to depreciate against their home currency. So if MNC, multinational corporation, it wants to raise money, it has two options. Number one, if this MNC is in US, number one option of course is that it can ask loan from banks from US, right? So in the next point is that if the manager is shrewd, wise, and is competent, he will always look for that currency which is going to depreciate against the US, because here is the company head office and company wants to raise fund for US. So if